Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Joshua Parker podcast. I'm with my good friend Drake Gooding. And Drake and I went to high school together, and we met in an engineering class. And so Drake...
What class was that? Was that Principles of Engineering?
Yeah, Principles of Engineering with Mr. Myers.
Yeah.
Myers. Oh my goodness, that was a really fun course. We did a lot of interesting things.
Yeah, I'm kind of using that stuff now.
Yeah, well,
Whatever,
engineering in general has been, like, when I was like 4 years old, I wanted to be an inventor. And so kind of the thought process behind engineering has been something that I've used for literally everything in my life. And so it's just been such a... we're starting off strong. That's just like such a cool insight for myself. So tell us a little bit about where you're at just right now. Like, what does your life look like?
Well, I just finished a 6-month stint as a sheet metal roofer.
That's pretty intense.
So that wasn't the greatest thing ever, but I was able to like save up some money and But right now, I own a company, so I'm the president and CEO of the Greenhouse Music Company. So
there you go.
Doesn't mean much, but it is an official.
Well, it does.
Registered S Corp in the in Pennsylvania, so that's kind of cool. And basically, had a studio. Don't have a studio anymore, but working on it.
Transitional period.
Yeah, transitional. I'm currently trying to sell my Toyota Corolla so I can buy a...
If anyone's interested?
2002 Ford Econoline cargo van to turn into a tiny house on wheels. Playing music. Working on some projects with my dad, helping him build a web series.
That's cool.
Trying to start a podcast of my own, a music podcast for my company. Taking drum lessons, taking guitar lessons.
It's a lot.
Focusing on practicing.
So what is your typical day? If we were to do like a YouTube series, Day in the Life, so what would just take us kind of through that of what that typically looks for you?
Unfortunately, right now, there is I couldn't tell you because I just finished roofing.
Yeah.
What was it? So today's the 18th, right? So my last day was on the 7th, and since then it's just been like a whirlwind of. So like on the 8th, I drove to Jersey to look at a van to buy, and I don't remember what I did on the 9th, but it's just been like a lot of. We also had our first show that we've done. We played our first gig last night, and so there's been a lot of rehearsing for that, like pretty much all day Saturday and Sundays. Tuesdays, Wednesday, Thursday evenings, a lot. But unfortunately, I guess over the past week, because this past week has been my first full week out of work, and it's just like every day is just random things that I gotta get done. So I'm hoping to settle into a bit more of a routine this week, because I do like getting a little bit of structure in there.
Absolutely.
Like wake up and practice guitar for an hour, or read, or do whatever. And I have been able to do more of that stuff, like reading, more practicing, more writing. And I'm currently, I guess this is what I forgot to mention. I'm currently working on developing a guitar pedal, which is what I've been using the Principles of Engineering stuff for.
Yeah, you told me about that. That's cool.
So with some of like the electronics stuff that we learned, resistors and capacitors and breadboarding and all that stuff, it's all sort of, I'm having to relearn it now. So I guess retention wasn't great, but that was 3-4 years ago. So,
but hey, we're using a good amount of those courses specifically, and so it's interesting that like what we actually maybe retained from it wasn't, we didn't use all of it, and that's fine. But some of the core fundamentals, we can look back on, and we have a reference point that exists. So you have the kind of. You can go back to the information rather than just discovering it randomly one day. First off, you're in a big transition because you were working long hours from what I remember.
Yeah, so I had to get up at usually between 4 and 4:30, and I would get home around 5 or 6, 6 at the late end, 5 was pretty normal. 5:30, something like that. Which I was not enjoying at all. But I was enjoying getting paid.
Yes.
And so my mentality there was like, I'm just going to put aside money and so that I can transition out of that and be able to focus a lot more on the stuff that I care about and what I want to do, as well as I still have like work to do for my dad. But so that's still something I'm figuring out is like I need to settle into a routine, and that's definitely a big transitional thing.
Yeah, 6 months of doing something that's like ingrained. It takes up so much of your time. It's you've probably lost a good amount of habits that you had prior to that.
Yes.
And so now, I don't know. I know I've read several like articles or books on the whole like setting habits, how long it takes. I forget exactly how long it is, but it's definitely more than a week.
Yes, it is. Because I started that right out of quarantine, so I had been basically quarantine was like really motivating for me. I know
it's a good way of looking at it.
When Mr. Wolf said that he'd like extended it by a full month, I was like, okay, I'm gonna write a bunch of goals for this month and try and accomplish them. And I really didn't accomplish most of them, but one that I did was I didn't eat processed foods at all for the month, so I was like cooking all my meals from scratch, which was awesome. And that's one thing that I lost roofing, because I couldn't. I mean, I could, but it would be like I already was waking up at 4:30.
Exactly.
So then saying, okay, now actually I'm gonna wake up at another half an hour, another hour early, so I can like make this awesome, from scratch breakfast or whatever.
Absolutely.
So it sort of just went to like, scrambled eggs or something pretty much every morning. But I started running over quarantine, so I had like a month, and I was not a runner, so I started the first day with 2 miles, which was like the first run that I had done, and I think I'd done one run in the previous year from that, so like not a runner. And then I think it would have been 28 days after that I did 13.17 miles or whatever. So that's motivating. Not good for my knees, but
you broke through a limiting factor there. That's great.
Yeah, so that's one thing I want to start doing is training for a full marathon.
In addition to everything that you're already doing.
Yes, that is one of my goals, to do a full marathon in the next year. So
briefly, like I said, you're doing a lot. Overwhelm, how you handle that, maybe from a logistical standpoint and scheduling, but also from an emotional standpoint of keeping track of everything, like staying present when you're doing, because if you're designing a foot pedal, you're also, with the band, and you're doing rehearsals, and then you're also training for a marathon. So, how do you kind of go about that?
I just take it as it comes. It's been well, one thing for me is, we're right now in Stevens, or like in the Ephrata area. And this is where I pretty much do all my stuff, is in this area. In terms of if I'm doing things with other people, so if it's like rehearsing or meetings or whatever, it's pretty much in Ephrata. But I live in Columbia, which is a good 45 minutes away. So that's something that's become frustrating, is like I keep having random things I need to do in Ephrata.
Which is where the van comes in?
Yes.
Potentially?
Yes, because just in terms of like a short, like I want to be able to travel with that, like go out on, road trips, or just leave, because I want to be able to go and do videos with musicians and stuff all around the world. Not around the world, around the United States. Or North America.
Well, eventually, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I just kind of, you just kind of got to keep going with it, you just got to, I guess staying focused or staying like prioritized is hard, because you're just like going in a million different directions, and that's something that I want to like work on is actually setting up those habits. But again, I've only been off work for a full week, so it's been like tackling a bunch of different things that I've needed to do. So like I had to take my cat in to get spayed in Ephrata, and that was something like I had to drive her here in the morning, and then I had to like figure out like I have a whole day in Ephrata. What am I gonna do? Because I don't want to drive, 45 minutes back and then drive another 45 minutes to pick her up, and then another 45 minutes back home, and like driving to go get the van or to look at the van, like constantly driving here to rehearse. It's just been a lot, or like my glasses were like horrible and scratched up, so I couldn't even wear them. So I had to like go to Walmart in Ephrata and give them my glasses.
These things add up.
They do,
time wise.
Like, and that's like taking up a full week is just like sort of.
Yeah. We talked about momentum earlier too.
Yeah.
Some of these things where if you don't acknowledge the fact that like, maybe these are things you need to get done, but you're thinking like, man, what I really want to do is work with the band or do some work on my pedal or to go for a run.
Yeah.
And these things are keeping me from doing that. And when it adds up over a few days, then that can be maybe a little challenging.
Or another fun thing that happened was my MacBook stopped working, so I had to take it to the Apple store, and they told me that there was water damage all over the whole inside of the laptop, and they have to rebuild it completely.
Impressive.
Which I don't know how the water damage happened, which is the frustrating part.
Sweat from all your hard work.
because it just randomly didn't turn on, and they said it was from water damage, but I'm like, I didn't spill water on it, so I don't know what happened there.
It's your cat, man. It's probably your cat.
Yeah, she probably pissed on it or something. But so then I had to deal with that, and then I got my laptop back, completely wiped. Everything's gone. It's like factory reset. All my like recording software, all my programs, my plugins, everything is gone.
Back up your files. Back up your files.
And I only had like a third of my laptop backed up, so I lost every song I've ever recorded as like me personally. I was able to save, because it was on my hard drive, a lot of the other bands that I've worked with. But every demo and like everything I've personally done is gone.
No.
And it's nice though. It's like a clean slate. It's like, all right, all that stuff sucked, so now we gotta like start again. But that's, just stuff like that has like eaten up this week. But I know moving forward, like getting solid practice routines with my instruments, because I'm primarily a guitar and bass player, but I also just started drum lessons last week. So like really setting aside time for practicing, setting aside time for reading as well. And I think similar to you, I don't read fiction.
I do not.
I cannot get into fiction. So like I've been reading a really interesting book called I'm blanking on it. It's called Launch.
Launch. Okay.
And it's basically this guy who's like an internet marketer who's he created this thing called the Product Launch Formula, and it's basically about building email lists and launching products online.
That's cool.
But launching them with momentum. So that's something I'm reading to help my dad with this web series that we're doing, which is like a subscription course online video series thing. But also for this guitar pedal that I'm working on, because I want to be able to launch it, like, do a real product launch and like have hype for it and hopefully sell some.
Hopefully.
Yeah, that's the end goal. But and then also it's like there's a lot of like when you're heading in a lot of directions at once, which I think maybe you can relate with.
I can. I can relate.
It gets to be hard to like in a day make progress on everything. So
Absolutely.
It's like in a single day I'm not probably going to be able to, because I also started rock climbing a couple months ago, so that's something I go to like a rock gym.
Oh my god, bro!
And
that's so much.
So it's like I'm trying to like.
Not that you can't handle it. Yeah, that is.
Okay, like I can't, and of course the rock gym is in Lidditz, which is a good 35 minutes from where I live.
So much transit time.
There's a lot of travel time,
But those things make you happy.
Yeah, they do.
Which is great, and so prioritizing, like you have a priority for those. It seems like to me that you have you have good expectations for yourself. So you push yourself quite hard, right? going through 6 months of a very physically demanding job, as well as it not directly, as far as like the context of it, it doesn't align with your what your
No,
goals
not
are.
at all, and that was difficult.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it was something that you had to overcome so that you were able to build like a more financial base, so that you could push forward on your other goals, which is great foresight, and then also recovering from that experience, because when you lose all of your sort of foundational habits that kind of construct your day, there can be a lot of kind of kickback from that.
Yeah.
So you have kind of a system and also clear expectations for yourself, where you know that you're going to, like, you have the confidence that you're going to be able to achieve this, but you're not expecting yourself to come right back and have all the things. It seems like you have pretty good mindset for it, which is great.
Yeah. And I guess the main thing also is like trying to find a way to enjoy your time as well, because I got into a situation where a couple months into working, I was just like, I would come home from work and stay up late editing videos and mixing for like the live streams that I was doing with my company, and just like constantly putting out effort all the time, and I just felt so like overwhelmed, and I was just unhappy. And so I stepped back from that a little bit, and I was like, okay, now I'm gonna take some time to like cook myself a good meal or something, like little things like that,
and enjoy it too.
Yeah,
not think that it's detracting. That's something that I've definitely struggled with in the past, with that whole idea of just cooking. Especially when I was trying to do something with my dad's business, and then moving something forward with myself, but then also trying to gain a lot of weight and muscle through going to the gym. And so I'd spend like an hour and a half to 2 hours at the gym a day, and then I would also be eating 6 times a day. So I needed to spend a lot of time cooking food. And I wouldn't cook every single meal. I would meal prep a lot of it.
Right.
But it's still a lot of things adding up, and so I don't know if you've encountered this, but maybe if like a hobby or a side thing that it's not at the top of your priority list kind of gets a little bit out of control as far as your time investment. And so for me, I had to say, listen, being fit is really important to me, right? Being, working on my body, on a pretty daily basis, at least to a certain degree, even if it's only like a half an hour, 15 minutes, whatever. That's just a decision that I want to make for myself.
Right.
And that's where I want the standard to be, not, I don't need to go try to be a bodybuilder. Well, it's just, I'd take another look at on my priorities.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned this briefly, but sometimes when you're really focused on like being very productive and getting stuff done, when you do take time to like do something that should be fun and enjoyable, it's not, and it's like you feel like I would like hang out with my girlfriend at the time.
I was about to say that.
I'm just like, I'm not. I should be doing this, or I should be doing that, and it's like you do sometimes, as long as you're not avoiding your responsibilities.
Yeah, of course, within reason.
Like learning to be able to just take a step back is something that I've struggled with, and just be like, hey, I'm just gonna like enjoy myself, and that's what I can do like with my, with my band friends. Like, it's really I enjoy rehearsing and writing music, and for me that's like a productive thing. So doing that is something that I feel like I'm getting stuff done, and also it's really enjoyable. Or just like going out to dinner, with your girlfriend is like, it's not the end of the world. But then if you were doing that every night or 4 nights a week, then it's like, okay, you need to like reprioritize and spend more time focusing on what you need to focus on. And I guess with like a girlfriend situation, it's also really important that person understands your priorities and, can work with them. Because I know, I'm not personally, but I know that there have been situations where it's like, there's a lot of time that was like demanded by someone, and sometimes
that's never happened to me before.
Exactly. And so yeah, having someone that like, that's a tangent, but
yeah, it could be a tangent.
And also just generally having people that understand, that are understanding of the fact that you have a lot of things going on, and you can't dedicate a whole lot of time to a lot of people. Like, I have some of my very closest friends that it stinks, but like last night we had a show, right? And I saw one of my friends that I haven't seen since probably the middle of summer, and it's like we're still really great friends, but just like I just haven't really had time.
Yeah, it can be a frustrating experience. I know I have a friend where, if in my past, something that has kind of been my like safety net almost. It's something that I go back to if times get rough. At least in the past, I think I'm pretty much over this now. But I would go back to video games. And so for me, what it was is that I was really good at something, and because I put so much time with it back when I was really sick with Lyme disease, and so having that significance was really great. But additionally, I had a lot of great friends through those experiences. But unfortunately, if you have friends that are either on the other side of the world and the only way to connect is through video games, or even if they live close, which is an example I'm thinking of, but they literally only play video games. And there's not really another thing to connect with. It's unfortunate, but I can't do anything.
If you stop playing video games, you lose that connection with that person. Or
exactly, yeah. And it doesn't mean I don't care about that person. But you have to take care of yourself. And you have to be true to yourself first. At least that's how I see it. And so that's definitely been a learning experience, because I've definitely kind of grown up to be, at least I was very much of a people pleaser. And which is it's a dangerous slope, because it can definitely lead to a lot of negativity. So I want to change gears slightly. So you have a pretty solid base as I'm seeing it, and which is fantastic. And I'm sure that all these things that you're going about, you're going to achieve them, and which is super great. So, but tracking back a little bit, if we kind of think how some of this might equate to either maybe your upbringing, or education. So you graduated early, which is one thing that we can talk about. And so what age were you when you graduated?
Yeah, so I graduated high school in 2017. So I was 15 when I graduated.
There you go. And that's just 3 years early.
Yeah, 3 years early. And I just turned 19, so I would have been graduating in the class of 2020. So I'm so happy that I didn't, with all the stuff they had to deal with school getting shut down and whatever. But yeah, so I graduated a while ago. And that has probably been like the single most defining and beneficial thing that I've ever done.
That's great to identify. So we can, if we can kind of pick that apart a little bit, because it might not be somebody graduating early, right? It might be another decision where they make they go through a similar process that you do, but in a different context. But they they reach a similar point where they're saying, like, this is what I need to do, because it's a lot of work, as to do, from what I understand. And also, there's systems in place to maybe prevent you from doing that. At least that's for me. When I was going through the school system, there were some hurdles to jump through where people were saying, no, actually, you really need to do it in this specific timeline. And it can be, for me, it was a big growing experience to kind of maybe realize that not every adult knew everything. And so let's just kind of, what was that like for you at the beginning stages of realizing, okay, yeah, this is something I want to do. Maybe what were some of your supporting factors, or inspirations?
Yeah, so you talked about like upbringing, and really the reason I was able to do that was because of my dad, because I went to like a Catholic private school for kindergarten through second grade, and basically like I came in one day with the Iliad, or the Iliad.
The Iliad?
Yeah.
What is that?
It's like an ancient, I guess it was really an epic poem, basically.
Okay.
But by Homer. It's like a very large book.
Gotcha.
And I came in with that, and I don't, my dad always challenged me to like read stuff, and so I came in with that the one day, and my teacher was like, you can't be reading that in my class. Like, I didn't read that until I was in college. Like, she wouldn't let me read the book. And it's like, I was in second grade. Like, I probably
second grade with you.
I didn't know what was going on, but I was like, I was like trying to read it and whatever. And so my dad, like, I don't know, it just like left the school.
Yeah.
We left at the end of the year because stuff like that was just. But then the next day I brought in the Odyssey, which was the second book in that like series, and that didn't make the teacher very happy. But yeah, so then I went and I did cyber school. So not homeschool, but like cyber. It's like public school online.
And so you worked from home doing that?
Yeah, so I did that from home, and my dad was like, He's like, I have this idea. Would you want to like graduate early? And so I was in third grade. I was like,
that's so cool.
I was like, sure. So
third grade.
He was like,
graduate early.
He was like, okay, so you just need to do all your work for third grade, and you just need to finish it by the end of the first half of the year. So what I did, so I just worked ahead and got all my stuff done by the end of the first half of the year, and then, we basically were like, okay, I'm done with my stuff, so now I need the fourth grade stuff. So then they sent me the fourth grade stuff. So I got that done by the end of the year.
That's awesome.
And then I just like gradually worked ahead so that I finished 7th and 8th grade in the same year. And then I was like, okay, I want to go to public school, I guess, because like the math I was doing and stuff was like it was getting challenging for my dad to like remember.
Yeah.
To be able to like help me when I had questions. So I was like, okay, I want to go to public school. So then I started public high school at Ephrata High School in 9th grade. And so I was 12 then. And I remember the first experience I had there was I got off the bus. And, the Ephrata Middle School is like over the hill a little ways. And I was like walking into the school and some random person was like, dude, the middle school is over there. and because I should have been in 7th grade. Yeah.
And you were in what grade? 9th grade. Okay,
yeah,
wow.
And then I just like, I never took study halls or anything like that. And I took some extra stuff. Like I had an extra ag course that was like an 8th credit in the day. So like an after school credit I was getting. And stuff like that. And then I was also in the gifted program. So my teacher talked to me in sophomore year and she was like, hey, if you do I think it was 10.5 credits. If you do 10.5 credits next year, you can just graduate next year. So that would have put me 3 years ahead. And I was like, yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Totally.
Oh my goodness.
And so we had to, she was like, okay, well, we're going to need your dad's permission. So we had to call my dad in the middle of the school day. But we had to call him from her personal cell phone because she didn't want the school to be able to track, because they don't like it.
Yeah,
so
what a great teacher though. That's awesome.
Yeah,
because I've experienced the other side. Not fully. There's definitely people that will get behind you as you've experienced, but I've definitely experienced a few people saying no, that's not how it works. Right.
Yeah.
So it's really awesome.
So I talked to my teacher and I was like, or we called my dad and I was like, okay, so my teacher, says if I do this, I could graduate a third year early. So can we do that? My dad was like, of course, So then my junior/senior year, I think it was 10.5 credits, which was a lot. It was a lot because it's 3.5 more than a full schedule with no study halls or anything.
Yeah.
So it was definitely challenging, but again, the most rewarding thing I think I've ever done, just in terms of, I couldn't imagine if I had still been in high school for the past 3 years.
Did you walk at graduation?
I did walk at graduation.
Awesome.
I was not in the yearbook I don't think I was in the yearbook at all, but because I wasn't a junior and they didn't put me in as a senior, so, but I did walk at graduation, yeah.
That's awesome. That's super cool. So kind of digesting this a little bit. So you had, this kind of started with your dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's cool about this is that from a very early age, he kind of instilled this almost like different family culture where this was just the normal, right? And so, because it seems like your approach now is like, well, this is just how life is, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is.
And so it's not that you don't have like it's a massive difference. It's almost like it's not effortless, but it comes naturally to you.
Yeah.
To a certain degree.
I would say so, yeah. And there's certainly lots of development that I've done on my own, and I've definitely taken sort of how I was raised and gone off in a very different direction in terms of my personal interests and stuff like that. But I would definitely owe a lot of what I'm able to do, not what I'm able to do, but just what I do now to that. Just to like, I guess, being raised with that, like, oh, you don't have to.
Yeah, so this is actually, we're perfectly on time right now as far as where we're at in the timeline. So yeah, your dad was a really big influence. You also had that teacher that was, believed in you, said, hey, like, you can do this, and she was kind of thinking outside the box. So it took some people around you to kind of, to at least, I mean, this is also how it is in, in other areas of life, right? When you're doing a good amount and then other people see it, right? Then they're like, wow, this guy's doing some good stuff, right? And we want to help him, right? It's kind of a natural thing, and that's happened to me as well, where kind of my reputation, just doing whatever it was, kind of preceded me a little bit, and they said, hey, like, so and so told me about you. That's really cool. I know somebody that can help you out. And that ends up being like such a massive thing.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
And so it's just really cool how things make a chain reaction and then just kind of work out, right?
Yes. And another cool, I say too much. Another cool thing that teacher sort of enabled me to do was she sent out an email to like all the kids that were in the gifted program towards the end, or maybe towards like the middle of my senior year, telling us about, hey, there's this like TED Talk thing in Lancaster.
Yeah, that's right.
And here's the link for the application if you have something that you want to talk about.
She pushed you to do that. That's so cool.
So she sent that to everybody, but I saw that and I was like, okay, I want to do this. So sort of on the topic of this podcast, my TEDx youth talk at Lancaster was about, I think it was titled age, how we use it to hold ourselves back.
Yeah, I remember watching that. It was good.
Thank you. I cringe, but
well, it's also like it seemed to me that like that's a really big step, right?
Yeah.
It's not a skill that you just kind of like, it's another one of those context things, or context. So what you were working on, like, you were working really hard and moving forward, but you weren't working on public speaking while you're doing that. It's not like you had some public speaking ability that you were honing, right? But maybe you had some confidence.
I was in FFA.
Okay.
And I did some public speaking.
There you go.
Stuff with them. And I've never been like too afraid, because I grew up like competing in martial arts and stuff like that. So like being in front of a crowd doesn't faze me too much. I mean, I still get nervous, but that's also then with playing shows, another thing where it's like last night I was playing drums on 3 songs, and I'm not a drummer. It's the first time I've ever played drums, and so that was like a little bit nerve-wracking.
First time you've ever played drums in front of people?
Yes.
Okay.
Not first time I've ever
important
played
distinction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just walked up, it's the first time I ever played drums. No big deal.
First time I ever played drums at a show.
Okay.
And that was like nerve-wracking, because I was like, I'm confident playing guitar and bass that I'm not going to mess up. But like the drums, when you mess up, the drums hold the whole band together. So when you mess up as a drummer, it's a lot. Anyways, that's unimportant. But
no, it is important though. It's that's a big responsibility to have, and you kind of made that stretch a little bit. But what's cool is that it's not that you're just passionate about one instrument, right? You're passionate about a bigger picture, right? You kind of have this vision for it. And so whether you might prefer an instrument, but whether you play guitar, main guitar or bass or drums, then from what it seems like you still feel like you're moving towards your goal.
Absolutely.
So that's really great that you have that flexibility.
And to like contextualize this, so when I did the TEDx youth talk, I don't believe I had started playing any music yet.
Okay.
So that all started, basically, I graduated, and then I went on a week trip to the beach, Ocean City.
Yeah.
And then I came home. I think I had a day at home, and then I did the TEDx talk.
Were you playing guitar when we were doing our little engineering thing?
No. I don't believe so.
Yeah, so how old were you when we were doing that?
15.
Okay, to give context of what we're talking about, after I graduated, we started a bit of an engineering project, kind of engineering. We cringe a little bit now, but it was one of those very valuable things. As similar, you said exactly, legacy tech. See, I mean, like you said, in your words, you cringe at your TEDx thing, but like, how much did you learn from that?
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was massive growth. Mm-hmm. I mean, but it's great to look back at. Yeah, I look back at some Facebook posts that I made because I just got back on Facebook and look back on 5 years ago, and I'm like, I need to delete a lot of pictures. Yes. That's just what the heck. But it's just it's a great mile marker of how much we've grown. Mm-hmm. So that can be really motivating. So once again, shifting gears a little bit, we talked about your experience in the education system. And so, I'm sorry, I had my notifications turned on so that I would not miss your arrival. There we go. So, we talked a little bit about your experience in the education system.
Right.
And so, maybe you have a unique sort of look at it. I know you did the TEDx talk, like you said, on the age and having it being a limiting factor. So do you have any sort of opinions on the school system itself and maybe on like how we're preparing kids, because you were kind of outside the system a little bit, and because you're outside the system, you were able to develop a whole lot of skills, right? But the system itself wasn't inherently empowering you to get there, right? Am I accurate?
Yeah. So the talk, it was about age and how we used to hold ourselves back. But it was focused on education. Mm-hmm. And I think, there's different types of age. And I used to, when I was researching for the TED Talk, or TEDx Talk, I had all this figured out a lot more than I do now, 3 years later. So I'm just kind of going off of my memory from then. No worries. But, there's mental age and chronological age, and those are the two big distinctions, is that you can be 15, but it doesn't mean your mental age is 15. So
you're saying that I can identify as a 13-year-old.
Your mental age might be, I've definitely met some 15-year-olds whose mental age is 10.
I have met some 30-year-olds
whose mental age is
10. Exactly.
Yeah. And so it's people can be the same age and at an incredibly different spot in their lives.
I agree with you. Absolutely.
And one, just based on how things lined up and I was able to graduate early and whatnot, I'd say based as a just turned 19-year-old, I'm not in the same position as a lot of other 19-year-olds. And it's not because there's anything inherently different with me, but just based on the way that I was able to sort of work around the system, obviously with the help of others. Mm-hmm. It's just given me a lot of unique experiences that people my age typically don't have.
So if other people, say, had a similar impact, or maybe a similar experience earlier on in their life, where they say, listen, there's some more creativity in this. There's a different way around it. Right, you don't necessarily have to go straight through the problem. You can figure out kind of a different solution, like the online program that you did. That system was not necessarily the standard system that everyone goes through.
I mean, now it is, but
exactly. Now it is. Times have changed, and I'm not in that, so I don't know exactly how that works. It's I'm sure it's changed somewhat from what previous online learning was.
Yeah.
I know I had a similar experience with online, video courses where you could work through it so much faster. But I'd be curious to talk to some people that are currently in the education system to see what are how does it differ from mine and your experience. Mm-hmm. And maybe they've put more attention onto it, and maybe that option isn't even available anymore.
Right.
Where they've kind of now slowed down the potential of that. So back to my original question of, you had this really great effect from your dad. And so, because of that, you were able to have this outcome. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there something that you would add into the system to try to emulate a little bit more of that, I guess, stimulation towards finding a better alternative, right?
Yeah. It's kind of hard because when you're doing something like working with the education system, it's standardized. Like you have standardized testing, you have Common Core and stuff like that. And it's hard to have a system like that when you have people that are so vastly different. Like I have people in my band who did very, very, very poorly in school, and that was never, I never was like the top of the class or anything, but I always did decently well. But I know people that love to learn. They love learning about music and stuff they care about, but there were not many opportunities to do that in school, and so they didn't focus and they did really badly. But it's not that they're stupid or that they don't enjoy learning. It's that they don't want to learn stuff that they're not interested in. And I can honestly say that since high school, I've had 3 years out. I've never used, not that I won't, but I've never really used most of my classes. Like I didn't really use anything I learned in chemistry class. I didn't use anything I learned in honors pre-calc. So it's hard, because I still think that those things are valuable in terms of what I would say. Teaching students how to learn on their own is important, because one thing that I would say, the biggest thing that kept me from being like a really, really great student was the fact that I was always wanting to learn, but I didn't want to learn what I was being taught.
Yes, that was a big obstacle for me as well.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people that are like that, and I still had this like sense that I still have to get good grades and I have to do well, but there are people that haven't been raised in like a family that cares about that or encourages them to do well, so they're just like, I don't care about this, and I'm not gonna put effort into it.
Yeah.
And so, it's not like I was inherently different than, there's specific people in mind. I didn't like what I was learning either, and I didn't want to, but I felt like I had this responsibility to at least do decently well. And I'm glad that I did, because that had, doors open for you when you do decently well, instead of, if you fail all your classes, good luck. If you decide later, I really need to go to college, it's going to be hard if you failed a lot of your classes in high school if you want to go to a good college.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not necessarily just the number, I mean, getting into a good college, I'm sure, is a factor, but, by testing yourself, and not literally, but more so developing study habits, and more so the background of how you get to good grades, in my opinion, is almost more important, right? So being diligent and, determined to get through it, and then also kind of equating that to what your success is, or your eventuality, which is another big thing. So you said, what was it? You said that something about the system. Let's actually talk about something before we started it. We talked about, like, what would you keep, what would you put away? So you said that one of the problems with adding something in is that it's standardized, right? So if we think about just, we don't have statistics in front of us, but from what you can kind of just intuitively, what you know about the world, if you think, okay, so chemistry, what percentage of the jobs does that affect? And also correlated to that, how necessitized is that information in high school? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So they're just like things I took a lot of engineering classes in high school, as you did. And a week and a half after I graduated, I picked up a guitar. And since then, my interests have gone completely the opposite direction in such a strange way. And it's also weird for me, like, being really or trying to be analytical and being into like engineering.
Yeah, you do have a unique approach,
but also like creative and musical, and because there aren't a lot of people that, at least in my circle, that have interests, like have skin in both of those games.
You talk a little bit about this is a minor digression, but you talk a little bit about, I think, as Dead Mouse 5 or Dead Mouse 5. I think it's him that you're talking about, how he has like his approach to music is just so like uninspired. I think that was the word that you used.
Yeah, Dead Mouse. I watched one of his master classes, and I'm not really into electronic music.
Yeah, but there's some core concepts, perhaps.
Yeah, and he was like, it was very interesting because his approach to making electronic music was incredibly. It's just like he literally said, like, he never feels inspired to make music. He just makes it.
How unmotivational.
And that's not how I am at all.
Yeah.
But I was like, it's crazy that you're able to do that, I guess, because music is typically such an inherently like creative and emotional thing, even just instrumentally.
Apparently not always.
Maybe not with electronic music.
I guess. I don't know. It's
EDM.
I guess there's so many different variables and it's just such a large area now. Yeah. Right? Where it's so not what it was, from what I understand, even like 1 century ago, with as far as the diversity of music and how
absolutely.
And we could have an hour-long conversation on just the diversity of music, I'm sure.
But anyways, so my thing there was like, if I would have known that the week after I started, or the week after I graduated, I would have like gone on this entirely different tangent of music production, music business, performance. I would have taken way different classes in high school. And I think thing is you just don't know what you want to do.
It's true, yeah.
And so that's why it's so hard. It's so like, I wish that everyone was able to just do it the way that I did it. But then there wouldn't really be a system then. Because it would just be unless, I mean, they do have like a GED. But if you drop out and get your GED, it does not look good. Like,
yes,
it does not look good at all. So that's not really a good solution to saying, I graduated when I was 15 because I dropped out and I passed my GED.
Yeah, and I think like just at kind of like a foundational level of graduating high school, it's kind of like the first big milestone for you as far as like your conscious life. There's other like finishing potty training, but you don't like really remember like what that feels like, but like graduating high school is kind of the first thing that you at least somewhat independently do, right? You have to decide to do well, and so some of the outcome there is your own. So I think it is important to have that achievement early on, as just for your mental state. Right. I just think, and this is more of a personal level, I think if something is standardized, then we should get as close to this is useful for everyone as possible, right? I'm definitely not against offering calculus and chemistry and things in the system, right? I think that information should absolutely be available. In the same breath, I would say that equally people should be pushed to do creative things like guitar. And so that kind of incentivizes people to explore some of their interests, but it kind of supports them, right? But what they're really pushed to do, because I feel like, at least how it was for me, I felt like it was more of a push towards the academic, going deeper into math and going deeper into some of these more intellectual-based things, even though you may not use it in your, like okay, so if I wanted to be an engineer, yes, calculus would be important, right? But there's definitely some things in there that, so maybe engineering is a bad example, but if you're going to something that's a little bit less technical, then it's just not really a whole point to that.
Well, okay, so I after I graduated, pretty much dropped. I didn't do much in terms of engineering stuff after I graduated, and engineering was like 100% my focus. Like all my extracurriculars were engineering classes. But now, like just recently, over the past 2 weeks, I picked up a book, Practical Engineering or Practical Electronics for Inventors, and I'm like looking through, and I'm like, whoa, these are like calculus equations and stuff, and I don't know what's going on here. But it's something that, but again, it's like something that I had to pick up and want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
But if it was forced on me, I wouldn't have liked that. And
it's true.
I remember there was some guy that commented on the TEDx talk when it got uploaded, and it was like, this guy lost his childhood. And I just saw that, and I was like, no. Like, the whole time I was in high school, I was focused. I was like, you know, traveling around doing martial arts tournaments. Mm-hmm. Not really. I mean, not when I was in high school, all over the world, but all over like the East Coast doing martial arts tournaments. I was like, I built. Do you remember that taser glove?
Taser glove. Yeah.
Did you ever see that?
Is that like a similar concept to like the electrocute gum thing?
So what it was I looked up online how to build like a little hand taser thing. And what I did was I got these gloves, and I was working on this thing where there's like a button, like a switch on the side of the glove, and you'd press it and you'd have like electrical arcs between your fingers, so you could like and I built one. And it worked. Awesome. There was a video on my Instagram. Oh no! See, I deleted my Instagram permanently. Mm-hmm. So like, and that videos of that taser glove and stuff
only there.
Were only there.
Ah!
But it was sweet. Like, there was like a purple electrical arc when I would. So there's a video on my Instagram, and I was like, the caption was like, "This is quite shocking."
This is quite shocking.
And I like connected the leads together. And it just was like zzz, and like this like inch arc of electricity between the gloves and stuff like I was like having fun and like doing all this stuff and reading about a lot of stuff that I was interested in and genuinely enjoying myself while being able to graduate early. And I think that's something that a lot of people who saw that were like, oh, he must have. That's cool. And I did even talk about in the talk about how I did fun stuff and.
It's so cool to hear that from your perspective because, you know, the outcome for us, I mean, I only did, it was just high school so 2 years of school in 1 year, 2 times. So, but you did so 6 years of school in 3 years. I mean, there may have been spread out some, but effectively that's what it was. Because you graduated 3 years early. So, but the approach that we both had to it was completely different. The motivators that we had were completely different. The experience throughout the whole thing.
Well, you were sort of forced into that.
Yeah. So it's definitely
like a circumstantial.
Definitely a different thing. So I have 2 more questions. Okay. So, if you were the head of education, okay, I'm putting a little bit of pressure on you here. Okay?
All right.
So if you're the head of education for the nation, right, and you had to make a decision, right, and we say, listen, you know, Drake, you've told us that these are the problems that you see in education. We want a solution now. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It doesn't have to be a complete overhaul. Be whatever you want.
It's tricky because allowing people to work at their own pace, mm-hmm. I think is really, really important. Mm-hmm. And I also think there should be more focus on like individual research and like study projects, mm-hmm. like classes that are dedicated to really getting or diving deep into something that you care about, because it won't be for everybody. There's not something that everybody really deeply cares about, but for someone like myself or you, if there was a class like that where it was just like you got to like deep dive into like something you're interested in and like you had to do like this big project at the end of it or something. I'm sure there's stuff like that in college. I know there is. Stuff like that I think would have been really valuable to have in high school where I could have taken one class period during the day to just, and it would have been like an engineering project just to like focus in on something like that. The other thing is like there's so many people with so many different interests that in order to have a base of classes to satisfy everyone's interests is unrealistic. Mm-hmm. Like for my friends who and myself who love music, like Ephrata High School can't have an entire path set out for just people who want to learn about the history of classic rock and guitar tone shaping and
So maybe more of like an exposure.
Well, that's why I'm saying like if there were more classes that were based on like I don't know how they would be organized, but more focused on the pursuit of special interests in a productive manner.
I like that kind of encapsulation that you use is special interests, and I feel like that could even be a great category of classes, right? And rather than pushing people towards a more specialized, very deep class, you assume that based off of the system that they've gone through that they will continue their education in some way, and you expose them to these sort of specialized courses. And so it doesn't mean that you're taught everything about music history. Like there's so many different facets to music in and of itself. Like how can you cover all of those things and have them be in a system? That's like you're talking about a very big expense and like a big challenge to the format of everything. But
I think there are private schools that do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because private schools, you're paying a bunch of money to be in a private school, and there are a lot of like unique ideas in some private schools that I've just heard people who have gone to like, I went to this private school, and we were able to. This is what our classes were like, and I was like, that's so cool. Why can't public school be like that?
I went to a private school.
Oh yeah.
And that was 5th grade through the start of 9th grade. Would not recommend. But that was my personal,
Yeah, and
personal
the same thing here.
experience.
I went to a private Catholic school, which was funny because we weren't Catholic, and that was another thing. Like I was in 2nd grade, and I had that same teacher who wouldn't let me read the Iliad in school. Was like, she asked the class, she was like, "Okay, now I need to know who all goes to church on Sundays," and everyone raised their hand except for this Indian girl and I, and she was like, "Well, if you don't go to church on Sundays, you will go to hell." And as a 2nd grader, I was just like, "You're stupid."
From second grade, you're already thinking like, "What? No, like this teacher doesn't know what this what." That was so not me. Well, I shouldn't say in 2nd grade because I was homeschooled in 2nd grade, so. I couldn't say that about my teacher because my teacher was my mom. Absolutely.
But yeah, offering more avenues for people to pursue, because perfect example, these musicians that I know did horribly. Some of them didn't even graduate, and they had to take like summer classes and all kinds of like stuff that's just not fun, not what you want to do. But they're constantly learning and improving in the things that they do care about.
Yeah.
And if their high school experience was focused on learning about music and whatever, because that's what they want to do with their lives. Like they don't want to go and be a biologist. They don't want to be a doctor or an engineer. They want to be a musician. And it's harder to be successful, I suppose, as a musician. Whereas if you focus in school, get good grades, you go to med school and you become a doctor, success is like, it's a clear path.
Okay.
It's a lot of hard work, but it's a clear path. If you want to be successful as a musician, it's not quite so clear. There's a lot more luck involved in it. But yeah, I just feel like there was a lot of wasted potential, specifically with those people, because they're so curious to learn, but they were being forced to learn stuff they don't care about. And I think that's like probably the biggest issue with public school is people who want to learn but are being forced to learn stuff that they have no interest in, and then they kind of give up on learning altogether maybe.
Wow.
And that wasn't the case with the people that I know, but I'm saying I feel like there are situations like that where someone is being forced to do all the stuff they don't care about, and then they just resort to kind of not being very responsible in the rest of their lives.
Yeah, that was me before I got sick. I was like literally a D student. I just absolutely terrible. Like didn't do my homework. I was zero inclination to do any of it. And I mean, I say this now, right, with a little bit of hesitation, but thankfully I had a very big experience that shifted that completely.
Right.
So that was a lot of really, I feel like, great points on the system. You know, since you have such a unique perspective on it.
And that's an important thing is gaining more of a unique perspective on life, because I feel like that's what some kids my age lack, because they've lived the same life that every other kid their age has lived, so they have the same perspectives. And there were definitely challenges. Like, I was definitely really awkward. Like, if I was in high school, if I had just had my senior year, I'm sure that I feel like I would have been a lot cooler than I was when I was 15. You know, I look back and cringe at just like the stuff that I did and like the way that I dressed and whatever. Like,
but it wasn't. At least it would make sense that it wasn't really necessarily a blip on your radar, unless you were really insecure about it at the time. But
no, because I thought what I was doing was so cool, like the way.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. But you're just so ahead of your time because but in like you were talking about the difference between actual age and more of the, how do you phrase it?
Like chronological age or like mental
age, exactly. So you're just ahead of your different priorities. Everyone's priorities there is being cool. Essentially, that's like number one. So to finish up, I want to kind of bring this back to you specifically. And so you talked a lot about different things. You touched a bit about your goals, but what is in the future for you specifically?
So I would say one thing my perspectives on have shifted a lot since high school is I was very focused on like material success. Like, I would write down lists of like all the exotic cars that I wanted, and
I feel that.
and like, I want to make this much money and I want to have this many companies and do all this stuff. And I guess recently I've gained more insight into the fact that like it doesn't do anything. Like, material stuff doesn't really do much for you unless mentally you're in a good state. And I realized that from the roofing, because for those of you who don't know, there's a thing called prevailing wage, and it's when you're working on government jobs, they like pay the workers a lot more. So if you're doing concrete work for like a school, or you're roofing schools, which I spent a lot of the summer roofing schools, you get paid a lot, like in excess of $70 an hour, which as an unskilled 18-year-old was incredible.
Yeah.
And I was able to get like
literally 10 times minimum wage.
Yes. And over the course of the summer, I was able to get like a new guitar that I play every day, and I love it, and it's fantastic. And I was able to get a really, I got rid of a 12-string guitar I had, and I got a really nice, cool, like 60s vintage one. And I was able to get cool stuff and like guitar pedals and stuff that I care about and I use all the time. But it didn't really didn't make me any happier, because I was still working this stupid job that I did not enjoy and I was just kind of miserable at. So just because I had those cool things that I wanted and that truly gave me, like, having cool guitar pedals gives you the ability to create unique sonic textures, and you can be inspired to write differently and perform differently, and they're really awesome. But if you're not enjoying what you're doing at first, like the very base of everything, if your daily activities do not excite you or interest you, that stuff, it doesn't do anything. Because I would even find that I would like come home and I would just be like, so like, I don't know, like I have an issue with like migraine headaches, and especially towards the end of roofing, I was getting headaches every day. So I would come home from work every single day with this terrible headache, and I didn't even want to like turn my guitar up loud and like use the stuff that I had worked for and was like so happy to have. And now it's like I can do all that stuff, and so my vision for my own future has shifted in the sense that I want to be able to focus a lot on doing things that I enjoy. And I guess I'm fortunate because I enjoy being productive and getting stuff done. I do not enjoy like playing video games, for example, or binge watching TV shows. Like I've definitely gotten into a situation where I'm like, dang, what did I do today other than like run through guitar scales while watching like The 100 on Netflix. Yeah. And it's like, oh crap, I shouldn't have done that. But like the amount of times that happens is so slim that like it's not an issue. Like and so I suppose focusing a lot on stuff that I care about and trying to make that what the focus of my life is. So challenging myself and learning and traveling is a big one. So that's sort of the inspiration for getting the van, because I was like, you know what? I have this car and it's fine, but like what if my car enabled me to drive anywhere that I can park and live there and like be able to sustain myself? It's like that sounds really cool. And I think just pursuing the things that interest you. I was talking to my band and we had kind of had a plan to get a van or something and go on like a road trip, just playing shows and doing fun stuff along the way and kind of like camping. And I know he went home and he told his mom, and his mom like put her head in her hands and said that she like had failed him as a mother because he was making such terrible choices. And I was just like, he told me that and I was just like, whoa, that's because he wanted to like go on a road trip with his band, and that's where I'm like, wow, I'm fortunate for my parents, even though they annoy the heck out of me. Like when I go and tell them the stuff that I'm interested in, they're like, all right, let's see what you can do,
What a blessing. That's awesome.
So moving forward, I don't want to get another full-time job again. I'm kind of over that. So I'm really trying to focus on my company and my, making music and just being able to live sort of a free lifestyle, and not in the sense that I just want to be like a homeless guy with no responsibilities that just lives in a van, but being able to have the time and the energy to pursue the things that I care about, and hopefully making those things successful enough that it gives me the ability to, perpetuate that situation. Not like, like I worked, I saved up a bunch of money, then I can go and do cool stuff, but then I run out of money and then I have to work again. I don't want it to be like that.
Yeah.
I want to be able to sustain being able to do the things that I really care about and help people. And like I have a lot of large future visions for my company and what I want to be able to do with it. And I don't know exactly how I'm going to get there, but just the journey, really, just like trying, I think is so important. And another thing, I know one of the guys I used to work with made a comment to one of the guys in my band that the guy in my band told me about. And it was basically, I was trying to work on this music festival idea I had for like a crowd-funded music festival. And I had gotten in contact with Greta Van Fleet's manager, and I was like emailing back and forth with their manager, if you know who they are. They're
the I think, didn't you tell me about these guys?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay. I think we've had a conversation about this.
Yeah, they sort of sounded a little bit like Led Zeppelin, but they're cool. They're a big band. They sell out. They have, not that this is hugely important, but they have like close to 700,000 followers on Instagram. So they're like, and I was like emailing back and forth with their manager, and like some of my favorite artists, like getting in touch with their managers, like trying to work this music festival out. And it was like totally a long shot and just, it wouldn't have happened. But I was like really trying at it. And then basically what this guy had told the other guy was that, Drake, he has all these ideas, but like, is he really going to make all of them happen? Like he always tries this stuff, but like, usually it doesn't work. It's like, well, am I supposed to not try?
Yeah, exactly. I've heard the same thing.
Because I've tried all this stuff, and some of it has worked to some degree, which is why I'm able to, I think, live at least somewhat of a unique life. But people have this mindset of like, oh, and sometimes they see what I'm doing and they're like, well, he tries to do all this stuff, but it, most of it doesn't happen, so whatever. But it's like, sure, but what are you gonna get out of not trying?
Yeah, exactly. You gotta throw what's that one saying? Like throw something against the wall, see what sticks or whatever. As an example, like with the classes and things like the college courses, I was so excited about this this opportunity about courses. I know we're over time. We'll cut it shortly, but this opportunity seemed like the implication just seemed so extensive, and I was very, very excited. And then I got into the courses and I realized, I was like, okay, this is not like I can get the same information in a YouTube video, and because of how competitive YouTube is, they're very intentional about making it very effective to be received well.
Right.
It's not a sort of antiquated, convoluted system or way of teaching. It's a very concise and usable. It's in that format, right? So I just realized that, and that's another. That's well. First off, what we're talking about is that's something that I was very excited about. I told a few friends about, like you included, and it's not that there's not a place for that, but for me specifically, I had to be real about my goals for it, and say, listen, am I just doing this to get personal edification and say that I did these courses from like Harvard University or whatever, or am I in it for the usable information that I'm going to use for my goals?
Right.
So that was a decision, but from the outside perspective, there was no growth, right? It's like, so you gave up is what you're saying. No, I didn't give up. I got I got more than I wanted to out of it, and now I'm changing my approach a little bit with this new information. It was invaluable.
And another comment that I've gotten a lot is that I change my opinions too much because one month I'll be, or I don't know what it is, whether it's a political topic or a religious topic or anything really. I'll be so set in one way, and then someone will talk to me the next month, and I'll be like, oh yeah, actually, I don't think that anymore. This is what I think. Like,
it's awesome.
That's so annoying, and it's like, no, it's because I realized I was wrong. Like I thought about the way I was thinking about whatever, if it was a political thing, religious thing, or anything, and I thought about it, and I was like, oh, actually, I'm looking at that in a stupid way.
That's so great.
And then like changing, like people are afraid to change their opinions because people are like, I don't know, maybe because they feel like it's not, like they're losing integrity if they tell someone they believe something strongly and then change it.
Or maybe just having the conversation. I feel like people get very defensive about their views, and I think that and this is just maybe a little bit of a reach, but I feel like that's a little bit of a defense mechanism that they may not actually know as much as they're letting out people to believe about the topic. So if they're maybe trying to mission something, and this is not for everyone, I'm just saying this is just maybe an observation that maybe they're defensive in learning about a new side of it, because
right.
They can't necessarily have that conversation in detail, right? And admitting like, okay, actually, I don't know everything about this, but I can learn something from you. But so that's something that's a step that you're taking is, I don't know everything, and I can learn something from you, which takes humility. There's a lot of foundational steps, and says volumes about your character that you're able to kind of make that observation that we're all learning and growing.
Yeah.
And
it does depend on the context, because that's also happened with particular people that I've realized, I was like condemning this person for something they didn't deserve to be condemned for, and then someone will find out like, oh, you're on good terms with that person again or whatever, and now that person dislikes you because they're like, well, you said all these things about or whatever, how you didn't like them, and it's like, well, I thought about it and I realized I was wrong, and now my opinion is different. But people get really offended by that. Or like my dad, he always makes comments about how I owe you, one day you say you want to do this and the next day you want to do that. And it's like, well, because I realized that what I said I wanted to do yesterday might not be the best thing. Like, for example, I had told you about saturation diving, which was something I was really looking into.
I was going to ask you about that, yeah.
And basically, you live in like a tank and do welding and stuff 1,000 feet below the surface, and
such a cool
for
concept.
Like a month at a time. And I was really set on learning how to do that and going to school for that, and like it's like 6 months of school plus like experience in the field, and that's where I sort of hit my stumbling block, because I realized you don't get to do that, and it pays incredibly well. you don't get to do that when you only work 4 months out of the year. And I was like, that's awesome. I can work for a month, travel, make music, whatever, work for another month and do this until I have enough money to pursue these different things that I'm trying to do, like different ideas that I have that I need capital for. But then the more I looked into it, the more I realized, like, wait, you don't get to just walk into that position. Like, you have to have years of experience as a regular commercial diver. And it's like, well, it's not worth it then. I don't want to spend 10 years full-time, you know, like being an underwater welder just so that I can then spend, you know, then get this cool job.
Yeah.
And so for that's something that has taken a lot for me, because I thought I found like the perfect solution to my problem.
It's a very similar thing with me in becoming an engineer. Just going through similar things where I was so.
Well, yeah, we both wanted to be engineers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But we both it seems like went through similar processes where, you know, we didn't just decide, you know, based off of maybe other people's expectations. We were really, you know, curious about it, which is another factor of this.
Yeah.
Is that you're continuing to feed your curiosity and you're learning more about something because you legitimately enjoy it. And when that's the case, and then you maybe talk to somebody, and then you talk to another person, and everyone that you talk to, at least this is how it was for me, they're kind of talking about what an actual experience of being an engineer is like, and maybe like their role in a company or things like that. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe this isn't the outcome that I actually envisioned for myself.
Right.
And that's why I switched gears to business.
And people get annoyed by that, and it's frustrating because it's like, what is the issue with realizing that something you thought you wanted is wrong for you? But it really upsets some people.
I think that they have maybe like a personal rule for how they think that the world should be, right? And how when their expectation for that is that people go to school, then if they're smart enough, then they go to college, and then they get X job, and it's a very linear progression.
Right.
And I feel like what's kind of taught in some ways, maybe not even in the school system, maybe it's in like traditional parenting, nothing against parents, but maybe it's something like, oh my goodness, I lost my train of thought, but like sort of going away from that beaten path is almost associated with pain, right? And so it's like you don't want to switch what you're doing, right? Because if you switch what you're doing in college, then that's so much pain, or that's so much money that you're wasting down the tubes, right? And you want to figure out what college you're going to, you know, when you're in 9th grade, and you know, in order for that, you need to have everything figured out. So I think there's a lot of pressure, and so then if you easily change your mind and have freedom and you enjoy it, and they maybe see that and they're like, what? That makes no sense.
Because I say with me, I have all these ideas and all these end goals that stay similar.
Yeah.
But it's like figuring out how to get there. And I'll come up with an idea for like, okay, if I pursue this, I think this is how I'm going to get to the end. Or not even the end goal. The end goal is like the beginning of the end. Like the end goal for me right now is being able to pursue the things that I care about. And some of those things take, you know, financial investments, like running a recording studio, you know, building. One of the things I want to do is like start a chain of like Airbnb tiny houses on like small pieces of land in remote areas around the United States. And it's like all these things, they take money. So it's me trying to figure out how can I get the money to do these things without just like taking a really sketchy loan or something. And so it's like figuring out how do I get to that point where then I'm financially stable enough to just pursue these things. Then from there, that's where I can like expand and like really go off. But
it's so great having this conversation, because in part you're kind of taking us through your thought process, and there's key distinctions there. Like for instance, asking the question, you know, how am I going to afford this, right? Rather than like, how could this be so complicated, right? Or why can't I just do what I love? You know, there's a lot of questions that people ask, and that you get the response that you ask for, right?
Yeah.
If you say that, you know, if you have a different response to that, you know, and say, you know, why is this so complicated, or why can't I just do what I love, or whatever it is, you know, then you'll figure out a way to figure out why it's so complicated. And then that'll become your reality, unfortunately. But thankfully, and you've really, it seems like you've reaped a lot of benefits to asking these positive questions, and then you get the right response, and then you're able to move forward, which is excellent.
And another thing is just like having a good mindset and a good outlook. Like I pitched to my group the other day, I was like, I have an idea. What if we, and this is not like a revolutionary idea, lots of people, there's like a whole community of people that's like the schooly community, and there are people that take old school buses and like convert them into livable spaces. And I was like, what if we got like an old school bus, fitted it with solar panels and like recording gear and stuff like that, so that we could drive anywhere in North America and like park the school bus and record, and like, because I think probably the most inspiring thing for music is like nature, and like what it would be so cool if we could drive out into like the Arizona desert, park the van, we got solar panels, and like record a song in the middle of the desert. Like,
that'd be sick.
And the response was like, yeah, but like diesel is expensive. I'm not even kidding. And I was like,
but can't that be so frustrating though?
It was, and I wrote this whole response back. I was like, why is that the first thing you have to say? Like, that is the most obvious. Like, yes, diesel is expensive, but like, what's your point? Like, doesn't it sound cool? And if it sounds cool, like,
make it happen.
Yeah. And I think that's another big thing that they don't teach you in school, is to just take action. They teach you, like, this is the path. You got to go to college. You got to do this. And that's what they show you how to do. But, like, they don't really show you, if that's not what you want to do, like, how do you take action in your life to like, just pursue things. And if those things don't work out, like, I don't know how many businesses, like, I've started an online jewelry business that failed. I started, like, making biodegradable bamboo iPhone speakers. That didn't work. I tried to start like a skateboard company.
But you change your approach and you learn from your mistakes. It's not a failure at all. Like, so many, like, the amount of people that are very successful right now that went through a ridiculous amount of failure, but it's so important. I feel like fear of failure is such a big thing of people, and
or not even fear of failure. Well, fear of failure is one thing, but being super discouraged when you fail and then giving up.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's the big thing. Like, with the guy that was saying, like, oh, Drake has all these ideas, but, like, most of them don't work. And it's like, most of them don't work, but sometimes one of them works. And it doesn't even work to the fullest extent that I wanted it to work, but it works, like, a little bit. And that's, like, motivating. Like,
exactly.
That's
awesome.
And that sort of perpetuates itself. But I guess it's a lot of just, like, the wrong mindset. And I think that's so, like, for education, like, being able to pursue, there are, like, 3 things that I think could be improved. One would be being able to pursue special interests more deeply and thoroughly for those who have special interests. Not everybody has special interests. And that's another thing that I've been sort of like blessed with, is being able to be passionate, because I met a lot of people that they're just not passionate about anything. So they don't have anything that they want to invest their time in. So they just hang out with their buddies and watch movies and play video games because they genuinely don't have anything they want to work towards. Which is sad, but I'm really grateful that that's not me. But like developing special interests, and then teaching to have the right mindset about things, to go, like the approach of approaching challenges, approaching learning new things, and like getting over obstacles and stuff like that. And then the third thing, which I was just talking about a minute ago, which I'm blanking on, was the taking action, like learning how to just generally take action, because you're not going to be able to teach everyone how to take action in their specific. Like in high school, you're not going to be able to learn, if you want to, start, I don't know, an underwater basket weaving company, this is step 1, 2, and 3. But you could be taught, this is how you can learn, this is how you can research, this is how you can like make connections and go after things that you care about. So I feel like those 3 things are really lacking right now in the public school system, that either make it so that people don't do well in school and then they think they're stupid and they just like give up, when in reality they have so much potential, but they just don't realize it. Because there's some Einstein quote about like, if you judged a fish on its ability to climb a tree.
Yes. Yes. I love that quote.
And so they either get like fed up and discouraged with the system and they just kind of give up, or they just do so poorly that, I don't know, it's just like, it's not a good situation to be in. And it's not good to have people feel they're stupid when in reality they're just being forced to learn things that they don't care about and that don't have much of an impact on their lives or what they want to pursue.
That last 2 minutes of what you were saying is what I've been digging for with a lot of these questions. I'm so glad that I apologize for going now 25 minutes over.
No, it's fine.
But I'm so glad that we did for selfish reasons because that was so perfect. And so many.
It takes a while to get those thoughts to develop.
Of course, but that's one of the amazing things about having these types of conversations is that we're both processing as we have these conversations,
right? Yeah,
and we're reaching deeper and potentially more effective solutions, which is basically the whole reason why I'm doing this podcast, right?
Yeah.
So just that we have that quote, it's an amazing quote. Says, everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid.
Yeah.
And that's such a good point and thing to remember.
And then you have two crowds of people. You have crowds of people that are going to say, well, screw the system. I'm not stupid. It's just the system's messed up. But then you also have the crowd of people that might have a little bit less self-confidence and a little bit less belief in themselves that are going to say, well, I guess I'm stupid, so I don't really have much of a future.
Mm-hmm. And maybe even another layer to that in the group of people that are saying, well, screw the system, I'm not stupid. There's people that take that to be a positive thing, and then they use that to change their life. And then maybe as we might be seeing now in current events, that maybe there's a group of people that take it and sort of develop some antisocial behaviors.
Yeah.
And that's just a little bit less productive. But I think that there's a systematic approach that we can educate people in a way to kind of tackle some of these bigger issues. And I don't have complete clarity. I don't know all the answers, but I feel like this sort of format is a really good approach, at least one of the approaches that I want to have in order to kind of find these solutions. Get people involved online through this content on different platforms, and then just stimulate productive communication, which is, I think, another thing that we're lacking a lot of. So absolutely. Hey, thank you so much for carving out your time.
I know thank you for
you're
having
doing
me.
A whole lot, and it's been enlightening and educational for myself, as well as, it's always a pleasure to spend time with you. And yeah, absolutely. So you're absolutely going to succeed in all these amazing things that you're doing, and I can't wait to hear more about them at a different time.
Thank you. I'm excited. And I'd say one more thing. I know we talked about it a little bit. Just giving yourself the ability while you're focused on being productive and getting things done to also have good connections with people and make friends and enjoy yourself. Last night, I know I texted you at 2:40 in the morning saying, yep, 10 o'clock is good for the podcast. And totally the reason for that was after we finished the show and cleaned up, we went to Waffle House at 1 in the morning, and it was such a fun and enjoyable thing.
That's awesome.
And it wasn't productive in terms of my energy levels or anything like that, but it's enjoyable, and making memories with people and stuff like that is just as important as being productive. But it's really about, you need a balance. Absolutely. And I think that's the most important thing, because I don't imagine you can be incredibly happy just shutting everyone out and just grinding 100% of the time. And I know there's a lot of gurus out there that are grind. Maybe Gary Vee is a good example of one of those.
Yes.
And I mean, to each his or her own, to each their own. But I'd say just personally, giving yourself the ability to breathe and enjoy yourself every now and then is important, alongside of being productive and getting lots of stuff done.
Because in the end, that's the goal. If everyone's miserable but we're moving forward, then that's not the achievement. That's not the outcome we're looking for.
No,
we're not trying to do that. So that's in it, absolutely. And you're right. It's easy sometimes if you go so far, and maybe we've both. I know I've been there, on that end of just taking it so far and kind of losing track of what it's all about. So that's
and there's really definitely point. People that are going to look at what I just said and be like, well, that's so blatantly obvious, but it has not always been obvious for me.
Yeah, exactly. And we might think yeah, it's obvious, but okay, if it's obvious, then why aren't you doing it? Type thing, you know? And there's a lot of, man, it's just so many gold nuggets in this past hour and a half. I feel like it's just, you know, part of the thing that goes in the background of my mind when constructing this is like, okay, so I want bits to put on like Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I want one-liners to put on Twitter, and I'm like every like 10 seconds I'm like ding ding ding, you know,
Good.
like all these things like running up,
yeah.
and I'm just like, you know, so fulfilled of the experience of this whole thing. It just absolutely exceeded my expectations. I mean, you know, I shouldn't even be surprised with having you as my first guest. It's absolutely fantastic. So with that, I'm gonna cut it off.
Sweet.
Because we're gonna, you know, we could probably talk forever. But you know, we you need to get back to your awesome thing. So thank you again, absolutely. And oh wait, last thing.
Yeah.
Anyone local? Do you want to tell them maybe when your next show is, or maybe how they can, you know, if they can look for you online, anything like that?
Yeah. So we don't have any shows set out currently because we're working on developing a stronger set list, but you can follow us on Instagram at Greenhouse Music Co. So I think it's green_house_music.co. We also have a website, greenhousemusic.blog, something like that. I don't know.
Just look it
up. Just look it up.
Just Google Drake Gooding and look for the long
Greenhouse
hair.
Music Company. Yeah,
exactly.
And then I guess to get in touch with me personally, I don't have much social media, but I have a Facebook. So
Drake perfect. Gooding. That's awesome. Hey, dude, thanks again.
Yep. Thank you.
Shake your hand, dude. Always an honor.
Sweet. That was fun.